got lots of different linear equations. There's actually 3. Slope-intercept form is the easiest one to use because it's easier to graph, it's easier to understand what's going on. So this is the one we want to use if we can. We use this one when we have a slope and when we have a y-intercept. And if you have a slope, you just put it there. If we have a y-intercept, you put it there. But the algebra books are not always that nice to us. Sometimes we don't have all that. So if we don't have all that, we're going to end up using the point-slope equation. We use this when we have a point and a slope. So the point-slope equation, you've got y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Now, this y and this x stay the same. They just stay the same. But we're going to have to plug in the numbers for the x1, the y1, and the slope. And just because they like to make it more complicated, there's 2 standard problems that we have when we do a point-slope problem. The first one is we have a slope and we have a point. So if it's that one, we're going to put the point and the slope into the equation. The other version is that they just give us 2 points. So then we have to find the slope and then we put the point and the slope into the equation. So it's the same thing, just one more step. Alright. Point slope is ugly and it's not super easy to really understand what kind of line it looks like and that sort of thing. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to change it to slope-intercept form. Now to change it to slope-intercept form, we're going to do the same 2 steps every time. First step, we're going to distribute our slope. Second step, we're going to add or subtract to get y by itself. Here's an example where we have a point and a slope. This is going to be my x1. This is going to be my y1. And my equation is y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. So this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. So y minus negative 4 equals 6. X minus 3. Minus a minus, this just becomes one giant plus. So instead of rewriting the whole equation, I'm just going to turn that into a plus sign. Now, my first step is to distribute my slope. So I multiply this all the way through. So y plus 4 is 6x minus 18. My second step is to add or subtract to get the y by itself. I'm adding 4 here, so I need to subtract 4 here and subtract 4 here. So y comes down, these are gone, my equals comes down, my 6x comes down, and negative 22. So now we have it in y-intercept form. So we know our y-intercept, we know our slope, it's easier to graph, it's less ugly than all that junk. So you're going to do the same steps. Here's another one. So I'm going to write my equation. And I'm going to plug all my stuff in. So my slope goes here, my x1 goes there, my y1 goes there. Now, I've got negatives here, negative, negative, cancel out, negative, cancel out. Instead of rewriting the whole thing, I'm just going to make a giant plus sign, giant plus sign. Now, my first step is I need to distribute my slope, so I'm going to multiply this through. Y plus 7, 4/5 x. And 2 times 4/5, I just multiply the top, so 8/5. Now what's going to be annoying is that fraction, fraction, not a fraction. I need a common denominator to add or subtract fractions. So 7 is going to be the same thing as 35/5. Basically all I did is multiply the top by 5 and the bottom by 5. So I get that. So now I'm going to subtract because we're adding here. So I'm going to do the opposite. 35/5 minus 35/5. And since we have a common denominator, I'm just going to subtract the tops. So my y comes down. These cancel out. My equals comes down. My 4/5 x comes down. And now 35 minus 8. 27/5. And now I've got a slope-intercept equation. So I've got my slope, got my y-intercept. We're good. Now, the other version, they like to do this quite a bit. They'll give us 2 points. So I said we use this when we have a point and a slope. We have 2 points, no slope. So the first thing I need to do, find slope. So I'm going to do my y's on top. And I'm going to do my x's on bottom. So in this one, I've got 4 minus 1, 1 minus -1. So I get 3/2. And now I can pick which point I want to use. So I could use this one, or I could use this one. I'm just going to use this one. So I'm going to plug in my slope and my point. So y minus 1, 3/2, x minus -1. Negative, negative makes it a positive, so I'll just make a big positive. I need to distribute my slope. So y minus 1 is 3/2 x plus 3/2. I've got halves, halves. I need this to be halves also. So that would be the same as -2/2. So this is negative, so I'm going to add and add. My y comes down, my equals comes down, my 3/2 x comes down, and 2 plus 2 is 5/2. And now I've got my slope-intercept equation. And another one, just for fun. Alright, so first I need to find my slope. So 4 minus -6, 2 minus 3. So I get 10/5. I'm going to make my life easier and just call that 2, because that's how many times 5 goes into 10. And picking points, it seems like you would want that one because they're all positive and people hate using negatives. But it's y minus y1 and x minus x1. So if I pick the one that's both negative, the negatives are all going to cancel out. You could use either one. It'll get you the same thing. But this one's probably easier. So I'm going to plug everything in. Y minus -6, 2, x minus -3. Negative, negative cancel, so it's a giant positive. Negative, negative cancel, so a giant positive. Now I distribute my slope. So y plus 6 equals 2x plus 6. And now I'm adding over here, so I need to do the opposite. So subtract, subtract. My 6's are gone, my equals comes down. My 2x comes down, 6 minus 6 is 0, so I don't even need to write it. So there you go. That should be enough to get you started on point slope.